Ukrainian drones strike Russian weapon factory. And for the first time, radar screens across Western Russia went blank.
We know freedom will win. We know Russia will lose. And we really know the victory will change the world. And this will be a change that the world has long needed.
Picture this, October 2023. The Russian military boasts the densest, most layered air defense network on the planet. An integrated kill zone of S-400s, Pantsers, and fighter jets designed to create a dome of steel over its western territories. The system is working exactly as designed. Then 10 shadows slip across the border. They were phantoms, Ukrainian drones, flying so low their propellers could kiss the power lines. Their mission: penetrate 625 kilometers into the heart of Russia. Their target, a facility so secret it didn't officially exist, a place called JSC Radio Zavod. They had no fighter escort, no stealth technology, no multi-million-dollar budgets. What they did have was a plan so audacious, it rewrote the physics of modern warfare. And it all hinged on a single desperate trick with a propeller. Welcome to Behind the Fame. Today we're breaking down the mission that shouldn't have succeeded, the day 10 drones exposed the fatal flaws in the world's most feared air defense system. New Orleans, 2014. The music industry is riding high on its traditional gatekeeping model. The journey began in the early hours. 10 drones, their Chinese-made engines humming at a precise 7,400 RPM, became insects in the grass, invisible to the high-altitude radars, scanning for bombers and fighter jets. They were exploiting the oldest trick in the book, the radar horizon. But to get to their target, they had to pass through the Gauntlet, the combat air patrols of Russia's most advanced fighter, the Su-35. 1449 hours, somewhere over Western Russia. Inside the cockpit of an Su-35, everything was quiet, state-of-the-art. His Urbis E radar could pump out 20 kilowatts of raw power, a system so sensitive it could spot a fighter jet from 250 kilometers away. But these weren't fighter jets. Their radar cross-section was 50 times smaller than what his systems were designed to track. Then his scope flickered. 10 contacts, dancing at the very edge of detection, flickering in and out of existence like ghosts. It was maddening. Then his trained eye caught it. A pattern in the noise, a heartbeat, the propellers spinning at 7,400 RPM. They were creating a distinctive pulse in the radar return, a tiny repeating Doppler shift that screamed drone louder than any visual identification ever could. His thumb found the weapon's release. 2 R-77 missiles dropped from their pylons. Fox 2. The math was brutal. 18 kilometers to target. The missiles would close that gap in 13 seconds, a near certain kill. But 13 seconds is an eternity when you know what's coming. And the drones, they knew. They did something that defied every protocol, every logical instinct. They cut their engines. Instantly, 10 solid contacts vanished from the Su-35 scope. They became nothing. The missiles already committed were now hunting for ghosts. Here's the physics that saved them. At 50 meters altitude, every radar pulse doesn't just hit the target, it bounces off the ground, creating a perfect mirror image. The missile's seeker head now sees 2 targets, one real, one ghost. The computer has 0.3 seconds to choose. It uses signal strength, but the ghost, reinforced by the ground reflection, often appears stronger. The missile chooses wrong. The first $1 million missile slammed into an empty field. The pilot watched the fireball bloom, a crater of nothing. But one drone had betrayed the others. Drone 3, its systems perhaps faltering, or its pilot making a calculated choice, climbed. 500 meters, engines at full power, a deliberate, shining sacrifice. The fireball was visible for miles. One hit in exchange for letting 9 escape. Heroes, it turns out, aren't just human. 3 seconds to restart engines. 2, 1. The distinctive whine returned as 9 shadows leveled off at 45 meters. They'd scattered across a 12-kilometer front. The math was now against the pilot. 9 targets, too much separation, fuel for only one more pass. He needed 3 minutes to re-engage. By then, they'd be 15 kilometers further on. His jaw clenched as they disappeared into the ground clutter. They had traded 400 meters of altitude and 1 companion for passage through the first layer. But in just 73 minutes, they would face a trap that couldn't be outmaneuvered with engine cuts or low flying. They didn't know that yet. 1,538 hours, Bryansk Oblast. The 9 survivors reached the agricultural flatlands, a navigator's nightmare of endless identical fields, perfect for getting lost. That's exactly why the Russians had positioned their most sophisticated electronic warfare assets here. The first sign of trouble was subtle. The lead drone's GPS screen, 12 satellites locked, strong signals, then 11, then 7, then nothing. Not a fade, an instant, violent electronic blackout. The Russians had sprung their trap. The system, mounted on 4 MTLB armored vehicles in a diamond formation, is called a Borisogledsk-2. Each one was pumping 100 watts of precisely tuned interference across the spectrum. To understand the brutality of this, consider the numbers. GPS satellites whisper at 0.025 watts from 20,000 kilometers away. Signals so faint they're buried in the background noise of the universe. The Borisogledsk was screaming at 100 watts from just 8 kilometers away. That's not jamming. That's electromagnetic obliteration. 4,000 times stronger than the signal it was destroying. 8 kilometers to the north, the real hunter waited. A Moskva-1 electronic intelligence system, its 3 antenna arrays arranged in a perfect triangle, synchronized to nanosecond precision by atomic clocks. It wasn't transmitting. It was listening with the patience of a wolf spider. The math behind its direction finding is both elegant and lethal. When a signal hits multiple antennas, it arrives at slightly different times. A 1 microsecond delay means the emitter is 300 meters further from one antenna. 3 stations create 3 time differences, which plot 2 hyperbolic curves. Where those curves intersect, that's your target. Accurate to 50 meters from 40 kilometers away. The 8 drones maintained perfect discipline. No transmissions. They were flying on pure inertial navigation, mechanical gyroscopes spinning freely. But these systems drift. At 10 degrees of error per hour, after 3 hours of flight, that meant 300 meters of drift. By the time they reached Penza, they could miss the entire facility. Something had to change, or the mission was doomed. The lead drone's processor ran the numbers. Mission success probability dropping below threshold. It made a calculation that would cost its life, but save the mission. At 1541, it broke radio silence. A transmission, 2 seconds. A GPS request, a position update, a formation sync, 2 seconds of electromagnetic screaming in the enforced silence. The Moskva-1 operator's screens lit up. A Christmas tree of data. Targeting solutions flashed to 3 S-300 batteries. They didn't need questions. They had a position, authorization. 648 N6 missiles were in the air within 8 seconds. Accelerating to Mach 5.5, they would reach the coordinates in 40 seconds. But the lead drone was already executing its final maneuver. A 45-degree bank, a climb to 200 meters, transmitting continuously. It was painting itself across every scope in Western Russia, an electromagnetic sacrifice. The missiles arrived at empty air, their warheads detonating in a sequence of furious, useless fire. Meanwhile, 8 drones had received the precious navigation update. INS errors corrected. Position confirmed. They pressed east in perfect radio silence while their leader flew north, drawing every missile in the oblast toward its own destruction. The Moskva 1 operators watched the decoy signal vanish in a burst of static. One more Ukrainian drone destroyed, but the electromagnetic silence from the east was too perfect, too deliberate. Something was wrong. The 8 shadows continued, thinking they were invisible, gliding through the electronic darkness. They had no idea that 12 kilometers away, a completely different kind of eye had been watching them for the last 6 minutes, one that didn't need radio waves at all. Before we reveal the terrifying system that tracked them without a single radar pulse, make sure you're not missing out on our deep dives into how the underdogs win. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the bell. We break down the strategies that change the game, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. 1600 hours. Penza Oblast. The 8 survivors were ghosts, 30 meters altitude, engines throttled back to a whisper. They had defeated fighters, survived jamming, and were now utterly silent. That's what made the first missile launch so shocking. The 9M38 surface-to-air missile erupted from a forest clearing with no warning. No radar lock, no targeting laser, just the sudden roar of rocket motors and the terrible knowledge that somehow the Russians knew exactly where they were. The system is called a 1B-75 Penicillin, originally designed to locate enemy artillery by the sound of their guns. Penicillin represents a paradigm shift in detection. It's an acoustic reconnaissance system, 8 microphones in a precise geometric pattern, each sensitive enough to hear a helicopter at 7 kilometers or a drone at 12, but it's not just listening, it's calculating. Sound travels at 343 meters per second, that's the key. When a drone's engine, that definitive 7,400 RPM whine, reaches the array, each microphone records a minutely different arrival time. The computer takes those differences and runs them through the same triangulation math submarines use. 16,000 samples per second, building a 3D map of every sound source. And here's what made it lethal. Every engine has an acoustic fingerprint. The Chinese engines in these Ukrainian drones run at exactly 7,400 RPM. The system had been trained on captured models. It knew that signature like DNA. The Tor M2 battery commander trusted the acoustic data and fired blind. The first missile flew in complete electromagnetic silence for 13 seconds. The drone's radar warning receivers showed nothing. The first warning was the sound, the rocket roar getting louder. Then, at 2 kilometers out, the missile's own radar went active. 2 seconds of warning. At 290 kilometers per hour, 2 seconds means 160 meters of travel. The lead drone's reflexes kicked in, maximum performance climb, 3 Gs pulling at the airframe. The proximity fuse triggered at 47 meters. The warhead, designed for helicopters, unleashed 3,500 tungsten cubes. The lead drone became confetti in a third of a second. Its sacrifice saved the others. The surviving drones began executing random throttle changes, 50% power, then 100%, then 70%. The constantly shifting engine notes and Doppler effects destroyed Penicillin's firing solution. The system needs consistent sound. A software glitch gave them another break. A third missile's radar went active at 4 kilometers instead of 2. That extra 2 seconds of warning was everything. 3 drones dove to an insane 5 meters over farmland, accepting the risk of collision with power lines. They skimmed so low, their prop wash kicked up dust. The missile, with a minimum engagement altitude of 10 meters, couldn't distinguish them from the ground and detonated harmlessly above. A 4th missile found its mark. Drone 7, lagging behind, took a direct hit. 6 survivors pressed east at maximum throttle. Stealth was dead. Speed was their only defense. 47 kilometers to target, 9.7 minutes to impact. The Penicillin operator relayed their trajectory to Penza. The facility's defenders had just enough time to prepare their final, most sinister defense, something that would turn the drone's own brains against them. 16-15 hours. Approach to JSC Radio Zavod. The 6 remaining drones saw their target. The facility sprawled before them. Then, At 800 meters from the perimeter, reality broke. The last line of defense wasn't guns or missiles, it was a Pole 21 GPS spoofing system. And it wasn't jamming. Jamming is a blunt instrument. Spoofing is a surgical lie. 4 transmitters around the complex pumped out 500 watts of perfect GPS signals. But the data was all wrong. Every satellite signal told the drones they were 3 kilometers south, 500 meters higher, and flying east instead of north. The lead drone's processor detected the anomaly immediately. Its optical sensors showed the facility dead ahead. Its inertial navigation said continue straight. But its GPS, the system it was designed to trust above all else, was screaming contradictory commands. Turn right, climb, you're over a river. This created a processing paradox. The autopilot began oscillating, trying to reconcile impossible data. The spoofing signal shifted every 3 seconds, showing the drones in different, impossible locations. Over an airport, inside a mountain, the navigation processor, trying to calculate a route between these rapidly changing false positions, began generating random violent course corrections. The drone's wings rocked left and right. In 5 seconds of this, it would tear itself apart. The drone made the only choice it could: trust the plan, maintain heading, maintain altitude, fly and hope. By pure luck, its INS drift carried it directly over the target. Its optical camera finally locked onto the distinctive roof of the Poliana D4M1 assembly building. The processor ran the final calculation: 47-degree dive, 97 meters per second impact velocity, impact at 1620. The explosion ripped through the assembly floor. More crucially, it ruptured chemical storage tanks, trichloroethylene, acetone, hydrogen peroxide. The mixture created a fuel-air explosion that traveled at 1,800 meters per second, turning the building into an inferno. The second drone saw the pillar of smoke and adjusted course. Building 7 took a direct hit 20 seconds later. The third, fourth, and fifth drones arrived simultaneously. One hit a transformer station, creating an EMP that crashed every computer within 500 meters. The others struck the component warehouse, igniting 6 months of stored lithium batteries. The sixth and final drone arrived at 1623. The facility was already a 1,200-degree inferno. It circled once, its camera recording the destruction for intelligence analysts back in Kyiv, then dove into the only building not yet burning. The Poliana D4M1 production line was gone. Without it, the brains of Russia's S-300 and S-400 networks were severed. Their reaction times would triple, their coordination would shatter, creating gaps in the air defense canopy for more missions, more strikes, more shadows to slip through. They started with 10 drones. They lost 4 to the Su-35, the Moskva-1, and the Penicillin. One sacrificed itself as a decoy. One was a deliberate martyr to break the electronic trap. 6 made it to the target. They proved that the densest air defense network on Earth could be penetrated not by superior technology, but by superior strategy, by sacrifice, and by understanding the physics of the system better than its creators did. They didn't just destroy a factory, they exposed a blueprint. They proved that a multi-billion-dollar system could be defeated by ingenuity, courage, and a simple trick with a propeller. The real nightmare for any superpower isn't a peer adversary with equal technology. It's an adversary that proves your technology is fundamentally, fatally flawed. This has been Behind the Fame. We break down the missions, the strategies, and the revolutions that rewrite the rules. The revolution is real, and it's not always loud. Sometimes it's just the whisper of a propeller, 45 meters off the deck.